Good morning, tubers. Welcome back for another adventure. So it's a little cold outside. I figured I'd start inside today. And what we have here is a 8 kilowatt, and it's known as a diesel air heater. These are typically used like in campers and so forth. And 8 kilowatts is equal to approximately 27,300 BTUs. That means this thing wide open would make a big dent in heating my upper garage, and it's really quite small and compact. I want to pick it up in such a way that I'm not going to drop it and break it. So it's about 15 inches long, I don't know, 7 inches square, give or take a little bit. By square, I mean looking at it that way. The air comes in on this side, and you can see by all the metal work and all in there, the heat comes out this side. And what you have is there's a fan here, and it blows air on in. You have some electronics, kind of a spark plug, let's call it, an injector for the diesel fuel, and it heats up that big metal heat sink, and obviously the fan blows air across it. Diesel fumes come out of one of these and the other one of these is a air intake. The pipe this is the pipe the diesel fumes come out of, right? And you can see the air intake tube in there, and these are so that you can kind of snake the air to where you want it to keep your feet warm. It also comes with a huge gas tank, an instruction book, a mounting plate, all that other kind of stuff. Now, running this thing wide open, it burns 0.8 liters of fuel an hour. So on a gallon of diesel fuel, you'll get 4.5 hours, give or take a little bit. I'm not sure how many gallons of fuel that tank holds. If I had to say, close to 3. So it's extremely efficient, especially if you kind of let this pipe go a distance inside the house in such a way it's not leaning on something and it's going to catch fire, right? Other than the bottom part, once again where this pipe comes out, all the heat comes out the front. You're able to touch the case and so forth. It's set up such that it could be used in a camper without torching the whole place, right? It's really meant to go out through the bottom and you know, out the back. This is kind of meant to swing in the breeze, right? But you do have to be careful for the first, you know, as a matter of fact, let's call the entire length of this hot enough to be troublesome. This was the cheaper version, and by that it did not come with a muffler. Some of these actually have a muffler that goes on the end of it, and by cheaper it was $150 delivered to the house for, once again, the 8 kilowatt model. You can see there's the fuel tank. That's an electric fuel pump. You have a little keyboard here and a key fob for controlling it. I already told you about the nozzles. You got a T that you put on the hot end, and once again you could have those, you can snake those to where you want it. You know, all the bits and pieces to put it together, and fuel line and wire harness. So if you were gonna smash this into your camper, you would theoretically have absolutely everything you need and be ready to go forth with that. Why did I buy this? I was looking into a hot air oil-fired system that you would use in a mobile home. And quite honestly, the prices were all over the place. And the condition of them was all over the place. I was finding some pretty nice units, you know, removals or barely used heaters, mobile home heaters. And they were going fairly reasonable, you know, 50, 100, 150, 200, 300. You know, for a real nice one, that's a pretty good price, except they were disappearing quickly. And then there's quite a bit of junk out there for $400 or $500, you know, stuff that you might use to warm your barbecue or something, because you definitely don't want to put it in your garage or house. They're just completely destroyed. So as I was looking at those, as I was kind of actually doing a search for that kind of stuff on eBay, I ran across this and figured I'd give it a try. So the next thing for this thing is to get dragged outside and install it. I also have to figure out where exactly I'm going to integrate this thing into the garage. And I'm thinking to warm the garage rapidly. If I have a pair of these things, that's pumping out over 50,000 BTUs, and I think I can bring the garage up pretty quickly. The garage is only 24 by 24. It's not very well insulated. It's really not insulated, but you know, I figured it would do a halfway. These things would do a halfway decent job. I could do air intake from outside, or I could burn the air in the garage. Burning outside air is safer because you're not, you know, picking up any fumes or anything. You're also bringing fresh air into the garage, and you're kind of pressurizing the garage with heated air. So, you know, hopefully forcing the cold air out. Theory, I don't know how well it works. This is small and compact. And you could kind of almost picture putting it low in the garage so that it's kind of warming the bottom half of your body. You do want to be a couple of feet away from it though, because the air that comes out of it is hot, and you want some mixing to happen before it's actually blowing on you. Otherwise, it could be uncomfortable. Also, you don't want it blowing on anything that will pressurize and eventually go off. This thing comes in several different heat versions. You have 2 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, and this is the big one at 8 kilowatt. If there was a 10 kilowatt, I would have preferred to buy that. And you could also buy this thing all pre-cased. And by that I mean it sits in a box smaller than that, but about the same squareness, just a little thinner, but about that square. And in the box is the heater, a fuel tank, everything. So all you have to do is dump fuel on the top, hook a battery to it, and hook up your exhaust lines and all that, and it's ready to go. That's handy because it's portable, right? One could theoretically carry it into the house anywhere, poke 2 holes in the wall, dump fuel on the top of it, and run it. And at 27,000 BTUs, it would, you know, do quite a bit of heating in one's house, right? It would do a good job for that. How long do they last? It kind of depends how you run them. If you run them on the thermostat, and let's say you have an 8,000 BTU one like this, and you're running it in a small space, perhaps a car, it has the ability to throttle itself back. But if you run it on a low setting like that, they have a tendency to clog themselves up. They kind of fill up with unburned diesel fuel and all the solids from that. and eventually you have to take them apart and clean them. I also expect if you run them conversely wide open all the time, eventually something's going to melt or break, the electronics will get hotter, eventually they'll fail, or the spark circuit will fail or something like that. So it's a matter of how long will it last. I'm thinking though at $150, how long do you really have to run it before it kind of earns its pay? You know, it kind of pays for itself in the heat you get out of it. From an efficiency point of view, I would imagine this thing, you're getting almost a full 140,000 BTUs per gallon of diesel fuel you run through it, because the only heat that doesn't blow into the room is the little bit from this pipe that goes outside. And once again, I mentioned, you know, kind of running it a little bit of a distance, perhaps putting an extension on it, and by the time it goes out the garage, right, as it goes through the wall, the pipe is relatively cold, right, that most of the heat is left behind, that most of the heat stays in the garage. Right now, you could buy these in the United States. I also saw some videos on them for people in Europe, United Kingdom, Ireland, who seem to have these in their campers and all. So you could get them there too. I would imagine at some point, depending on the emissions that come out of these things, they might get harder to buy here in the United States. Kind of like we were able to buy China diesels, Changfas and so forth for a long time, those big heavy cast iron brutes, and suddenly we couldn't buy them because they wouldn't allow them to be imported with the emission stuff. Even if you go up to Canada and buy a surplus diesel and try to bring it across the line, depending on how much they're paying attention on your way across the line and all, you can also run into some problems. So, you know, if you're thinking about buying one of these things, you might want to get to it here in the United States. I'm not saying that the change of law is imminent, but you know, I wouldn't be surprised if importing them doesn't become a problem. Should you buy the put-it-yourself-together model like I have here? Remember all the safety. Obviously, you don't want the fuel line where it's going to get hot. You don't want it near the exhaust. You want to set it up. I don't know if this tank feeds off the bottom or feeds off the top. Personally, I'd rather use the pump to pull fuel off the top of the tank. And quite honestly, I would have a tendency to put the tank just a little bit lower than that, so that the fuel is kind of always going a little bit uphill. That way the tank doesn't siphon should the line break or something. Just me, that's just how I would hook it up. Obviously, electrical safety. This thing runs on 12 volts. I think they say it takes like 8 amps to preheat the diesel fuel so that it'll ignite. After the thing ignites and it generates its own heat, then it goes down to running at about a half an amp. The fan and the igniter take about a half an amp to run. So it'll go quite a ways. I could run it on my solar installation. Once again, with the size and all, I think hooking it up, running it wide open, I think a pair of these would really do my garage well. Or starting off perhaps with the propane heater and this thing both running, and then going to this thing. Propane's about 90,000 BTUs a gallon. And around me, a gallon of propane and a gallon of diesel cost about the same. So I'd rather get 140,000 BTUs than get 90,000 BTUs for the same price, especially up in the garage. So as I'm trying to improve my space up there, obviously I have to make space to work. But on a day like today where it's about 10, 12 degrees outside, it's also be nice to know that in advance and, you know, perhaps run this heater overnight, pay the money for the diesel fuel. If it costs me a gallon or two of diesel fuel to do that, so $3 to $6, it would be worthwhile. Then I could walk into a warm garage and actually get started, right? If one is messing with the propane, you got to kind of fire it up and wait for it to get warm. And, you know, as you're waiting for it to get warm, if you go elsewhere, you got to hope it doesn't burn the place down. A wood stove or a pellet stove, you know, those two, particularly a wood stove, you really got to keep an eye on it and keep it stoked to get heat out of it. You get a lot of heat, but you got to do those things. Where with this, it'd be nice, once again, if it'll go 5 hours on a gallon of diesel fuel, 10 hours on 2 gallons, that'll do it. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching and commenting and subscribing. Please keep your feet down, your heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye.